They thought it would be a joke, a cruel little joke among the rich and bored. Every year, the Langston family, old money, old manners, and very old prejudices, hosted a grand masquerade gala at their hilltop mansion in Bel Air. It was a kind of event whispered about for weeks, where the champagne flowed like water, and no one dared wear last season's couture. But this year, they wanted to spice things up, and that's when Preston Langston, the arrogant heir to the Langston fortune, made a suggestion that would ignite a fire no one could put out. "Let's invite her," he smirked, swirling his glass of whiskey. "You mean the cleaning lady?" laughed his girlfriend, Brielle. "Yes, you know, her, the one always humming gospel while scrubbing floors." They were talking about Althea James, the 38-year-old black woman who had cleaned the Langston mansion every Tuesday for the past 5 years. She was quiet, polite, and always wore a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. To them, she was invisible. To Preston, she was an opportunity for entertainment. "We'll tell her it's a costume party," he grinned. "Tell her she's being honored for her service." Just imagine the look on people's faces when she walks in. Brielle squealed with laughter. The invitation was sent, a formal letter, gold embossed, sealed with the Langston family crest. To Althea, it read like a dream. "You are cordially invited to the annual Langston Gala in recognition of your dedication and service to our home. Dress code, formal or masquerade. RSVP appreciated." She stared at it for hours. She reread it 12 times. Was it a mistake? It couldn't be. For the first time in years, Althea allowed herself to hope. Althea didn't have much. A studio apartment, 2 jobs, and a heart that had been bruised too many times by the world. She had raised her son, Malik, alone, working 12-hour shifts just to keep him in school, away from the streets, and close to his dreams. But tonight, someone had seen her. Or so she thought. She spent her entire savings, every last dollar, on one night. A custom dress, professional makeup, an elegant hairstyle that reminded her of her mother's soft grace, and a driver, because if she was going to be seen, she was going to ride with dignity. Gala night. Flashes of lights, valet doors, luxury cars pulling up. The Langston mansion glowed like a palace. Chandeliers glittered, guests laughed behind masks, and every corner smelled like roses and champagne. Preston stood near the entrance, sipping his drink, watching the arrivals with predatory amusement. Did she RSVP? Brielle asked, clearly buzzed. "Oh, she'll come," Preston chuckled. "People like her don't turn down invitations from people like us." But nothing could have prepared them for what happened next. A sleek black town car pulled up. The valet opened the door, and out stepped Althea James. Not in a uniform, not in rags, but in a floor-length, midnight blue gown that shimmered like water under moonlight. Her hair was swept into a regal updo, her makeup subtle but flawless. She wore diamond studs, borrowed from a friend, and a silver mask that framed her eyes like a queen. She didn't walk into that ballroom. She owned it. People turned. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Whispers followed. "Who is that? Is she a celebrity? That dress. My God, she's stunning." Preston nearly dropped his drink. Brielle's jaw went slack. This wasn't the joke they had planned. Althea moved with grace, her chin held high, not a trace of nervousness. Every step echoed with the dignity of someone who had been ignored for too long and was done being invisible. And while most guests looked at her with admiration, there were others, like Preston, who couldn't stand the shift in attention. "This wasn't supposed to happen," he hissed to Brielle. "She wasn't supposed to look like that. I thought you said she was just a cleaning lady?" Brielle whispered, suddenly uncertain. Preston tried to regain control. He walked up to Althea with a forced smile, trying to humiliate her in front of the crowd. "Miss James, we're so glad you could come. Didn't think you'd take it so seriously." Althea looked at him, really looked, then smiled softly. "When someone opens a door for you, it's only polite to walk through with grace," she said. The room went quiet. Preston's smirk faltered. She walked past him, owning the floor, the room, the night. Althea had always been more than they thought. They didn't know she had studied classical music in her youth, that she had once dreamed of becoming a concert pianist before tragedy forced her to trade dreams for survival. They didn't know her hands, now calloused from years of cleaning, had once danced across ivory keys and recitals filled with light and hope. They saw a cleaning lady, but she was a woman of history, pain, strength, and unshakable grace. And now, finally, the world saw her too. Althea standing near the piano, a gloved hand resting gently on its surface. She looked around the ballroom and saw not enemies, not snobs, not cruelty. She saw opportunity, not for revenge, but for a reckoning. This wasn't the end of her story. It was just the beginning. And before this night was over, everyone would know exactly who Althea James really was. Althea James moved through the crowd like a quiet storm. She didn't speak much, but she didn't have to. People parted for her, glanced at her, whispered behind champagne glasses. Preston Langston, still frozen near the bar, watched as the woman he had tried to humiliate was now the center of admiration. "Who is she?" someone asked near him. "Is she some kind of royalty?" Another said. "She came in that town car. Maybe she owns something. Maybe she's new money," a man guessed. "That's no new money," an older guest whispered. "That's class. Real class." And Preston was furious. "Enough!" he snapped at Brielle. "She doesn't belong here. I'm ending this now." He stormed over toward Althea, who was standing near a painting of the Langston family patriarch, a grotesque oil portrait of a man who had once owned half of the city's textile industry. "Althea," Preston said loudly, trying to draw attention, "would you mind telling everyone what exactly you do for a living?" Heads turned. Glasses paused mid-sip. Silence swept through the ballroom like a cold wind. Althea didn't flinch. She looked at him, not as a servant to a master, but as a woman looking a boy pretending to be a man. "I'm a cleaner," she said calmly, clearly. "I clean your house. I scrub your floors. I've cleaned the dirt you pretend doesn't exist." A few gasps. Someone chuckled awkwardly. "But tonight," she continued, her voice steady, "I'm not here as your employee. I'm here as your guest, because you invited me." She smiled. "Or have you forgotten?" Preston's face twitched. "You weren't really invited," he spat. "It was a joke. I thought even you would get that." The crowd stiffened. "A joke?" she repeated. "Well, I'm glad I didn't laugh, because the moment I walked through that door, I stopped being your joke. You don't belong here." Preston shouted, now losing control. "This is our world, not yours." That's when a voice in the crowd cut through the tension. "That's funny," said a deep voice, "because she's the only one here acting like she belongs." Jonathan Chase, billionaire tech investor, one of the night's most respected guests. He stepped forward, offering Althea his arm. "Miss James, may I get you a drink?" She nodded, gracefully accepting. Preston was speechless. Unknown to everyone in the room, Althea had done more than prepare her dress for the gala. She had been preparing for years. Working in the Langston mansion had given her access, not just to the rooms and rugs, but to files, conversations, patterns. She knew how the Langston family operated. She had cleaned the office where Preston hid documents he thought no one would touch. She had heard the calls, the arguments, the secrets, but she hadn't spoken until now. Back to the ballroom. Guests now whispering about Preston's outburst. Preston's public humiliation wasn't enough. Not for justice. Not for the truth. Althea stood beside Jonathan Chase, her posture unshaken, and finally said what she came here to say. "Preston, you may not remember me from before I worked in your house, but I remember you. You were 17. I was 19. Your father had just fired my mother after 15 years of service because she refused to lie about what she saw him do." Another murmur from the crowd. "And do you know what happened to her? She died 2 years later. Broke. Humiliated. Because of a Langston. That's when I made a promise," Althea said, stepping forward, "that one day someone in this family would look me in the eye, not from above, but from equal ground." Brielle pulling Preston aside. "This is going viral," she whispered, phone in hand. "People are recording. Twitter's exploding." Hashtag Althea James is trending. You idiot, she hissed. You invited a woman smarter, stronger, and classier than you to your own party. Preston tried to respond, but the damage was spreading fast. Live projection screen flickering on the ballroom wall. Suddenly, the giant wall screen in the room flickered. It showed surveillance footage, grainy but real, of Preston shouting at staff, throwing wine glasses, insulting employees. Play it, Althea said quietly to the DJ, who she had spoken hours earlier. One video showed Preston saying, I don't care how poor they are. They're lucky to even breathe the same air in this house. Gasps. More whispers. Langston Patriarch's lawyer pushing through the crowd. Miss James, he said, I'd like to speak to you privately. We can do it here, she replied. Fine. I represent the estate of Raymond Langston. I was unaware until recently, but it appears a revisal was filed 5 years ago, leaving 40% of the family holdings to someone named Althea James. Dead silence. Preston's face turned white. What? That's not possible. It's legal, the lawyer confirmed. He made the amendment after a series of meetings with a woman he referred to as the only honest person I've ever met in this house. That was you, wasn't it? Althea nodded slowly. Althea didn't just show up like a diva. She walked into the lion's den, unarmed but unafraid, and turned it into a courtroom. And now the judgment had begun. She wasn't here for revenge. She was here for reckoning. Phones buzzed. Camera flashes popped like firecrackers. The hashtag Althea James was now trending in 6 countries. Preston Langston stood in the middle of the room like a sinking ship, eyes darting, mouth dry, panic etched into every wrinkle. This isn't real, he whispered. She forged something. This has to be fake. But the lawyer confirmed it again, slowly this time, like he was talking to a child. The will is notarized, witnessed, and filed. And yes, it is very real. As of tonight, he added, Miss Althea James is now a legal shareholder in Langston Holdings. 40% ownership, effective immediately. Media outside the mansion. News vans were already parked outside the gated estate. Journalists pressed against the security fence, demanding answers. Althea, is it true? Preston, what do you say to the accusations of racism, fraud, and abuse? Did you really clean her toilet before she cleaned out your legacy? Inside, guests began leaving, quietly, guiltily, like survivors of shipwreck trying not to be noticed. But Althea remained in place. She didn't gloat. She didn't smile. She simply stood tall, composed, and calm. Flashback. 6 months earlier. Althea sits at a kitchen table late at night. Piles of documents surrounding her. A younger woman enters. Her niece, Leah. Annie, are you really going to that party? I am, but not just to walk in with a nice dress. Then what? To finish something I started 20 years ago. The camera pans down to reveal legal documents. Emails between Preston and corrupt city officials. Audio recordings of Preston threatening workers. Invoices for luxury items paid from charity accounts. You're going to expose them? No, Althea says. They'll expose themselves. I'll just light the fuse. Back to ballroom. Fuse now lit. The ballroom screen lit up again. This time it was a slideshow, each slide more devastating than the last. Slide 1. An internal memo from Preston suggesting layoffs at a homeless support program to fund a private yacht upgrade. Slide 2. Surveillance photo of Preston handing an envelope to a building inspector. Slide 3. Bank statement showing a $500,000 transfer from a nonprofit run by Langston Holdings to Preston's personal crypto wallet. The crowd gasped again and again. Someone in the back muttered, He stole from a charity? Althea's voice rang out across the room. You invited me as a joke. But the real joke is that you thought you'd never be held accountable. Brielle, slamming a glass down on the bar. You absolute idiot, she muttered to Preston. You had everything. And you blew it because you couldn't stand the idea of a black woman with dignity walking into your world. We're ruined, Preston. Preston, now soaked in sweat, tried to defend himself. This is all fake. I'm being framed. She's a cleaner, not a what? Althea interrupted. The room fell still again. Not a what, Preston? A businesswoman? A whistleblower? A shareholder? A woman with more courage than anyone in this room. Preston turned red, then pale, then red again. This is my father's company. Your father knew what you were, Althea said softly. That's why he changed the will. He saw the monster growing in you. And he gave the legacy to someone who had earned it. Jonathan Chase, watching silently. Jonathan stepped forward again. He didn't say much. He just took out his phone and tapped on the screen. To my followers and investors, he said quietly, Langston Holdings is now under partial control of someone I trust completely, Althea James. And I will be increasing my stake in the company. It was a public vote of confidence, and it mattered. More gasps. Then applause. Langston board members slipping out the side doors. The power vacuum was already forming. Preston had lost a room. He had lost control. And most importantly, he had lost his mask. Later that night, the ballroom is mostly empty. Althea sat on a white leather couch in the corner, heels off, hair let down, sipping water. Brielle approached, heels clicking, voice low. You know, I thought you were just some bitter ex-maid with a grudge. I was wrong. You planned this, Brielle added, down to the minute. I planned to tell the truth, Althea replied. And truth is never a grudge. It's a cure. Brielle stared for a long moment. What happens next? Althea looked toward the now empty stage. Now, she said. Now the cleanup begins. News headlines flashing across the screen. Billionaire exposed at charity gala. Black cleaner shocks high society with ownership bombshell. Langston family fortune under federal investigation. Althea James, from maid to mogul. Corporate racism has a new face and a new reckoning. Montage the fallout over the next few days. Preston arrested for tax fraud and money laundering. Langston Holdings stock crashes, then rises as investors rally behind Althea. Employees of the company cheer as new policies are announced. Equal pay, maternity leave, internal promotions. Althea walks through the corporate building, not as an outsider but as the CEO. Althea receives a letter. A thick envelope arrives. It's from the IRS. She opens it carefully. It confirms what she already suspected. Preston had not just stolen from the public. He had stolen from his own family trust. And now he owed millions in back taxes. Althea smiled softly. Clean up, indeed, she whispered. She walked the balcony of her new office, looking out over the city skyline, a view she used to mop windows to see. But now the city looked back at her, and it knew her name. 6 months later, aerial shot of downtown. A gleaming new sign is installed on a corporate tower. Langston James Global. The company that once symbolized greed, corruption, and elitism had transformed. Its leadership values and purpose had all been rewritten by the woman who once cleaned its marble floors. Inside, Althea James sat in the CEO's office, modern, bright, filled with light. No more dark wood panels and portraits of egotistical men. Instead, framed photos of employees with their families, success stories, and a massive vision board titled, Dignity is Power. Company meeting in progress. Amanda, a single mom who used to serve coffee in the basement cafeteria, now led the operations team. Javier, once a janitor on the night shift, now headed logistics and sustainability. The energy in the boardroom was different, alive, purposeful. Profits are up 60%, Amanda reported, and employee satisfaction surveys hit 98%. Althea smiled. People give more when they're treated like they matter. Community Center unveiling ceremony. A new sign reads, The Henry James Foundation for Opportunity, Not Charity. Named after Althea's late father, it offered free job training, microloans for women-owned startups, and support for formerly incarcerated individuals re-entering the workforce. Althea stood at the podium. My father died cleaning the homes of people who wouldn't let him use their bathroom. He never got to see what justice looks like. But today we're giving it form. To every child told her less than, this place is for you. She'll never be more than help. Why is she even here? It's not her place. You clean floors. Stay in your lane. Althea's voice overlays them. I never stayed in a lane. I built my own road. Brielle being interviewed on daytime TV. Brielle Langston, now divorced and largely cut off from the social elite, speaks candidly. Was I part of the problem? Absolutely. But the truth is, Althea never asked for revenge. She demanded accountability. And I think she saved the company my family was destroying. She pauses. She didn't just show up in a dress. She showed up in power. Federal prison. Preston behind glass. Preston Langston, once the golden heir, now wore beige inmate clothing. He looked smaller, older. A prison counselor hands him a letter from his own children. It's short. One line stings more than 1,000. We hope we grow up to be more like Aunt Althea than like you. Preston crumbles. Althea's home that night. Peaceful, modest, warm. Althea walked into the house with 2 little girls, adopted sisters she'd taken in from foster care. The camera follows them to the kitchen, where homework and laughter filled the space. What's this word mean, anyhow? One of them asked. Dignity, she said, kneeling beside them. It means knowing your worth, even when the world tries to ignore it. Althea speaking at a university panel, packed auditorium. The moderator asks, some people online said your story was about revenge, that you were too harsh. What do you say to that? Althea's response is calm, unwavering. Revenge would have been to ruin Preston's life like he ruined mine. Justice is giving people what they deserve, whether it's consequences or compassion. The man who tried to humiliate a black cleaning lady ended up teaching the world that ignoring someone because of their uniform is the worst kind of blindness. Viral footage from the gala, slow motion replay. We see the moment Althea enters the room in her red dress again. This time, the voiceover isn't mocking. It's narration from a young black girl watching on TikTok. They said she came from nothing, but they were wrong. She came from everything they never understood, grit, grace, and the kind of power that doesn't need a title to change a room. Montage, legacy in action. Employees at Langston James laughing during lunch breaks in a new rooftop garden. Families benefiting from the foundation's education grants. Former cleaners now trained as finance officers. A company billboard that reads, "We rise together." Always. Jonathan Chase, being interviewed. I've invested in startups my whole life, he says. But I've never seen ROI like what Althea created. Not just in money, but in meaning. Rooftop at sunset. Althea alone. She looks out over the city, a mirror image of the night she first walked into that gala. But this time, she's not crashing anyone's party. She's hosting the future. Her phone buzzes. A message from Leah, her niece. Just got promoted. Because of the internship you made happen. I love you, Andy. You changed my life. Althea smiles. That's the goal, she whispers. Not to be feared, but to be followed. Althea's final words to camera. They thought inviting me was a joke. But dignity doesn't care how you got into the room. It cares what you do once you're in. Never underestimate someone who has cleaned up after others. They probably know how to clean up the system, too. If this story moved you, like, share, and subscribe. Let's keep proving. Respect isn't a favor. It's a right.